Well, the holidays is here, and the whirlwind of gift giving, holiday parties, decorating, all that food and family get-togethers, it's all here. For many, it's a time of fun, excitement, and incessant Mariah Carey music. It can be overwhelming. I'm Candace Gibson, your host for today's discussion, coming to you from the Baptist Health Newsroom. Did you know that there's actually an uptick of heart attacks and strokes during the holidays, higher than any other time of the year? The holidays can take an emotional and frankly stressful toll on most people. And there's the physical toll of hanging lights and cooking that can also land people in the hospital. Here to talk with us more about staying merry and healthy during the holiday season are two experts from Baptist Health, who are joining us right now, Janelle Falcone and Dr. Ladan Pormasia, who's a medical director at the Baptist Health Urgent Care. Thank you guys both for being here.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Happy holidays. I guess we're already there. But before we begin today's discussion, I do want to remind you, as always, now to send in your questions and comments. We're here to help you and happy to answer any of the questions that you might have. So let's start with the latest statistics that kind of indicate that Americans are 5 times more likely to say their levels of stress increase instead of decrease during the holidays. Why is that, and what are some ways to diffuse that stress? Janelle?
Yeah, so there's so many stressors to kind of take into account, right? Of course, we know that there's financial stressors. Just taking a look at our economy, so people are experiencing a lot of stress because of that. We're also thinking about just family dynamics, right? If we're already concerned about our family on an everyday basis, all of a sudden it becomes compounded, and trying to navigate those tricky conversations, things like that, and really how to even care for ourselves as well, trying to balance self-care. And I encourage really people to ramp it up. And some people are spending this holiday alone or away from a loved one, right? If it's the first holiday without somebody that they really care for. So coming up with a plan, I would say first and foremost of how you're going to manage some of these stressors are going to be the most important thing to do.
So, what is part of that plan? Excessive drinking?
Well, stay away from the excessive drinking because most of us think it's going to help. It does not. It might help in the moment, or it might make you feel a little bit better in the moment, but in the end it can make depressive symptoms worse, anxiety symptoms worse. So I would stay away from the drinking, but talking to yourself about boundaries, right? Having that conversation with yourself, reflecting on what your boundaries are going to be when you go into a gathering, how you're going to set those boundaries as well. Even coming up with your self-care plan, right? Some of us have our routine now, but when things get busier, it's so easy to get out of that routine. So really knowing what to rely on in those moments, practicing ahead of time is going to be so important.
And I guess kind of knowing what are those trigger warnings for your mental health, whether it's hearing Mariah Carey or not.
Mariah Carey or not, but listening to other people's feedback to that point, knowing your own triggers, but sometimes we don't see it within ourselves and other people see it for us. So hearing people out.
Well, doctors, decorating for the holidays can be exciting, but also dangerous for a lot of people when it comes to something as simple as putting up Christmas lights. What kind of injuries and illnesses are you seeing in urgent care around this time of year?
I think most people forget that during this time of year, the doctor's offices are generally closed. And so it leaves the urgent cares and the ERs available. And so we can see anything from respiratory viruses to people wanting to get their medications refilled to those injuries of slip and falls, some lacerations from cutting themselves from cooking and so forth. So, and unfortunately the things that get a little bit more serious and are seen in the ERs is when we have the excessive drinking, and that leads to motor vehicle accidents, and that's when we start to see them more in the ERs. You mentioned about the heart attacks and the strokes being higher this time of year, and people forget about that as well. And so we notice that it has to do with lax diets. And so people are going and having a lot of food, yummy food, that are high in salt, sugars maybe, and cholesterol and fats, and that causes them to be at increased risk for that.
And what are some of the early signs? Like, say you're at a holiday gathering with your family members and they're suffering a stroke or experiencing a heart attack, what are some of the early signs that you should be on the lookout for?
You know, that we have classic signs and classic symptoms.
Okay.
I would say for heart attacks is they will say that they have a heavy chest or chest pain, or an elephant is sitting on their chest. It may radiate down their left arm, and these are the classic ones. But sometimes in women or in elderly, it might be something that's very nonspecific. They start to feel nauseous or abdominal pain.
Okay.
And then with stroke patients, sometimes you notice that all of a sudden they can't speak, or there's slurred speech, or a part of their body starts to get numb, or they're unable to move it. So those are all signs that we want to be very, very vigilant about looking for.
And really quickly on this note, what are some precautions that should people take to avoid a visit to the urgent care or emergency room, I guess?
So I would say that 'tis the season to be cautious, right? So there are some pointers that we tend to give our patients, and this is more for things that we do in Florida. You know, we like to put up decorations, but it's hot outside, and we get up on those ladders, but we get on those ladders with our sandals. Well, we don't want you getting up on ladders with sandals. We want you getting up on those ladders with protective shoes that are slip resistant, maybe like a buddy system. We know that you are working against time to go ahead and cut those foods, but make sure that you keep your sharps away. If you're gonna drink, hopefully not excessively, make sure that you have a designated driver taking you back home. So things like that. Christmas tree decorations, if you have little kids or pets, put a little fence around it, because that could be a choking hazard as well.
Wow. Some good reminders right there. Some people find that the holidays, is pretty depressing. They're more depressed, they're a little anxious with stress as well during the holidays. Is there such a thing as seasonal depression?
There is such a thing as seasonal depression.
Okay.
We call
it's not all just in our head.
It's not just in our head. It's seasonal affective disorder. It is technically a mood disorder, right? And it falls into depression. And so what it is we have shorter days. We're experiencing it now with the time change, where we have a lot less daylight, and that does start to impact our mood. And then usually we'll see a shift during springtime where our days get longer as well. But we'll start to feel different symptoms, like just not feeling quite ourselves, an increase in sadness, maybe we're isolating a little bit more, not engaging in things we would normally do. So I don't want to underplay it and just saying like it's a seasonal thing, it'll pass. Because if it's really interfering with life, I would say go get support.
But I'm from New York, where we think that we believe that there is a seasonal depression, but it's associated with no daylight. At least we get a lot of sun. How does that still manifest itself here in South Florida?
So I think we're used to so much sunlight. I don't know if I'm speaking for myself, but now with the limited sunlight, it makes a difference even with our sleep cycles, melatonin production, vitamin D is going to play an important role as well. And so that is going to impact our mood, right? And so if we're feeling a little bit more gloomy because we're not getting as much sun, then that's going to impact the rest of our day, whether we're engaging with our normal tasks, whether we're as productive with work, whether we're actually leaving the house, past 6 or 7 to engage with friends and things like that.
Yeah, well, a lot of health experts are saying that the flu is on the rise as we go into these winter months. So as we gather with family members over the next 8 weeks or so, do our chances of catching the flu, RSV, COVID, do those increase, and what should we do to try to avoid it?
Absolutely, they do increase. But I can tell you that the bright light in this is, if COVID has taught us anything, it's taught us to be very cognizant of others and our loved ones. And so we have learned within this time to be very vigilant about good hand hygiene, to be vigilant about socially distancing ourselves and wearing a mask. So I think that in order to prep ourselves for getting these particular viruses, we just need to plan ahead, not go to as many social gatherings, or pick the ones that are the most specific for us. Talk to some of our family members that are going to make sure that they're also reducing their risks. And make sure that our immune system is boosted. So you want to make sure that you're having healthy meals, you're exercising, you're taking your vitamins, as Janelle was mentioning, to kind of, sleeping, absolutely, and to make sure that if you do come in contact with those viruses, that your body is strong enough. And of course, we always recommend to get your flu shots and your COVID boosters as well.
Yeah, next month is going to be December is the 3rd anniversary of COVID.
Yes.
Ring its 4th. Can't do math. Fourth anniversary.
Well, it's here still and still alive.
It
so
is here, and still getting a lot of people getting the diagnosis. So
Yes,
definitely
absolutely.
have to be on the lookout for that. As you know, a lot of us will get together with family members, and there's always that person, that Uncle Larry. Who cause all that trouble and drives a lot of people nuts. So how do you, I know you said to have a plan, but how do you navigate that stressful aspect of that relative that always causing trouble?
I still say go back to that plan, right? Because if you know what you're going to do in the moment, you can actually instinctually do it. So things like take a deep breath, right? Sometimes we all of a sudden get that random question thrown at us, or just that comment that we know is really going to bother us. Take a deep breath. Try and respond with kindness. If you don't think you can, ask yourself if you can just not engage or get up and take a break, right? And have some of those lifelines. Who's a friend that you can call? What are some coping skills that you can do, right? Listen to your favorite song, watch a funny video on, YouTube, whatnot. But have those lifelines that you can engage in that moment if you can't just take a deep breath and respond with kindness.
Okay. And definitely bring up politics and religion, right?
Always, always the two go-to conversations, right, that everybody loves to have. And it might just be setting those boundaries too in that moment of this is what I'm not going to talk about today, right?
What we're not going to do
This is what we're not doing, and have some other conversations, right? Have those questions ready of what you do actually want to ask people and what you want to talk about.
So, some of my in-laws or sister-in-law would bring different games that would help kind of navigate
There's table topics and things like that. So sometimes when you're in the moment, you don't know what to say, you don't know what to ask, you don't know who's going to get upset by what. Sometimes just having preset questions. I know it sounds a little bit cheesy, but it's extremely helpful.
Yeah, and of course it can bring that mental health crisis to the forefront, especially during the holidays. What do you see coming through the urgent care at this time of year when it comes to mental health?
We see a variety of things, and it could be anything from anxiety to depression to PTSD, and in some cases we've even seen people that have had suicidal ideations. So we see a variety of things, but I can tell you that the majority of people that actually do end up coming in don't really complain about those things. And what we see is that they come in and it's somebody that's saying that they've had a respiratory illness or some type of injury that's 2 months ago or up to a year ago. And as we start to talk to the patients more, we realize that they're just sad and that they're lonely and they don't want to be alone during these specific days like Christmas and New Year's. And so for those particular patients, we just want to make sure that we're there for them. And if they do need more serious help and medications, that we transfer them to the appropriate spaces.
And so what happens, because I was mentioning to you all before we started that I had a friend who was having a mental health crisis, had suicide ideation, and we called around to different places, and it was really difficult to find a place for her to check herself in. What do you do when that happens? Who do you call first?
I would say get her to the nearest ER, right?
Okay.
Even though it's not a Baker Act receiving facility or they don't have a mental health facility, they will have the resources to get her to the right place, to transport her to the right place. But I would say for that person in particular, and for even the loved ones trying to support, it can become overwhelming trying to call all these places and feel like there are no resources. So getting to the professionals first and foremost, and then letting them figure out what comes next.
And anything you wanted to pick up on that?
Absolutely, same thing. You know, we see a variety of things, and if something is a little bit more serious, that's why we're there. We're there to make that process easier for not just the patient, but their family as well. So feel free to come into us, and we will direct you to the right spot. But don't just sit there and wait. Definitely get examined and seen.
And does suicide ideation increase this time of year?
Yes, absolutely. It does, just because of the fact that during the holidays we do have a little bit more stressors. We do have a little bit more heightened emotions, and so we deal with more anxiety, depression, and that can lead to many people, you know, falling into the suicidal ideations.
Very interesting there. Let's get to some of the most searched questions when it comes to the holidays right now that we see on the internet. Is it normal to feel stressed during the holidays? Who wants that?
Yes, absolutely.
I don't think I know anybody that doesn't
Right?
feel stressed during the holidays. That would be something to watch out for.
I would say yes. That would be a warning sign almost if they're not. And if they don't feel stressed, let us know the secret. But stress is a normal part of life. The holidays compound it.
All right. Why is my anxiety so bad during the holidays?
For all the reasons we're talking about, right? If it's Uncle Larry asking all the wrong questions or saying all the wrong things, or maybe it's just our own insecurities coming through, right? If we have concerns about food or even our own relationships, and then everybody keeps bringing it up and it becomes that hot topic, the financial piece as well, or if it's just missing a loved one. There's so many aspects to it.
Yeah, you forget that it's something about that first year after you lost a loved one that during the holidays, it's even more depressing, I guess.
Absolutely. It leaves that void because usually maybe they would have cooked a meal or they would have shown up in a specific way.
Yeah.
And now that piece is missing.
And is it the busiest time of year, the 6-week period or so between Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's for that matter, in the urgent care?
We are typically busy throughout the winter months anyways, and there are certain days, like maybe the beginning of the day, that might not be that busy on Christmas, and then you'll start to see people coming in during that time. So it's hard to gauge that question. It varies year to year, but I will tell you that that is a time where people are home, they're available, and if they have any illnesses or any concerns, they do come in, definitely.
And is there, we talked about binge drinking, but is there something that can happen from binge eating on Thanksgiving that can land you in the urgent care?
Yes, absolutely. We talked about binge eating the yummy foods that might not be good for people that have chronic conditions, but then it's also eating too much that might cause the nausea, the vomiting, the diarrhea. So we see people coming in, the following day not feeling well with stomach aches as well. But I think the important thing that, we need to kind of just discuss here is how we can prevent those things from happening and coping with it a different way than binge eating and binge drinking that can lead to actually holiday heart as well with the drinking.
It sounded like a Pepto-Bismol commercial.
Yes, I know, right? I just need to do the dance.
You've got heart rhythm.
Yeah.
Diarrhea. Appreciate it. Any tips as we enter this last minute this period? Any last minute tips that you would
Yes,
have?
I would just say, during this time, remember that as busy as we are, that you have to put yourself as a priority. Take that time to take a deep breath, practice some mindfulness and maybe some meditation and yoga, and know that it's okay to say no to things during this time of year. And we kind of talked about the financial burden, and I would say, if possible, maybe prepare for that ahead of time, put some money aside, set a budget, and that way you won't have as much stress. Not to say that you won't have any.
Yeah, I'm a believer in no is an entire sentence.
Yes.
It is.
Anything, Janelle, you want to do?
Absolutely. So I agree with Dr. Parmesia in the sense that no is a complete sentence. Set your boundaries, right? You are allowed to say no to attending things and attending to yourself, right? So first and foremost, keep your peace and enjoy the holidays.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys. Enjoy your holidays.
Thank you.
Really
You too.
appreciate the
Absolutely.
conversation and sharing your insight. And remember, to our viewers, be sure to hit the subscribe button on our channel here to keep up with the latest health and wellness information and tips from our experts like these young ladies. You can also connect with our social media channels, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and LinkedIn, and check out our resource blog for the latest news at baptisthealth.net/news. You'll find a link to all of the episodes of the Baptist Health Talk podcast as well. On behalf of everyone at Baptist Health, stay healthy, stay safe, have a wonderful holiday. Thanks for watching.